This is Brother Peter Diamond, vaticancatholic.com. I wanted to share with some of our readers who are interested the recent developments with an individual named John Salza. Readers of our website know that back in the summer we posted an article refuting an article that was written by this guy named John Salza against sedevacantism. He wrote an article that was published in a false traditionalist publication attacking the sedevacantist position and claiming that it was contrary to canon law. And in my detailed refutation of his article, I go through his arguments. I show exactly why his arguments are wrong. And in the process, I prove that he directly contradicted himself on numerous core issues. For example, at the beginning of his article, he admits that publicly heretical clerics lose their offices without declaration, but by the end of the article he's arguing just the opposite. He's arguing that even if a pope were a self-excommunicated heretic, he would retain jurisdiction over the universal church, which means that he would retain his office. So he contradicted himself on one of the core issues of this debate in the article, among other things. And I go through, and frankly, his arguments are devastated in the article. And I show how he misunderstands and misuses canon law, etc. So that's all in this article, and you can find the link to that article in the description for this video. And so we posted that back in the summer to refute what he had published, and it was necessary to do so because some people had been persuaded by his attack on the sedevacantist position. And he's an apologist in the Vatican II sect. He's also a lawyer and a former high-ranking Freemason. And one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of my article is that prior to publishing my rebuttal, I had written to Salza and asked him in a friendly fashion if he'd be interested in a telephone debate on the issue. And I quote the email that I sent to him on August 23rd, 2010. And he never responded to that email. We also sent a certified letter to his address, and the letter was received and signed for at his address, and we received no response to the letter. So we sent an email, we sent a certified letter to his address, no response. Our website is also very well known in the traditional Catholic world. It's the most active sedevacantist website in the world by far. One other person we know at least emailed him about our article after it was published. And so anyway, we received no response and we had moved on. His arguments had been dealt with, and all of this occurred in August and September. Our article was published in September. And so we heard nothing for months and we had moved on with our lives. But anyway, in late December 23rd, 2010 in fact, we received a surprise email from John Salza. And in a file on our website, and I'm going to link to it, you can see the precise email exchanges that followed after his letter. And in this letter, on December 23rd, and you can read the whole thing, he says that he, quote, just found out that I wrote a rebuttal to his article against sedevacantism. And he makes it seem as if he didn't know about my challenge to debate him, etc. And he says, let's settle our differences by having a live public face-to-face debate with a moderator at a neutral location. Let me know if you are interested. And what's interesting is, on the same day, we received another email from another individual named William. This is a guy I've debated 2 times. I debated for almost 3 hours on the sedevacantist position. You can listen to it on YouTube. It's quite revealing. In the debate, he admits that he doesn't believe anti-Catholic Protestants are even heretics. He won't say pro-abortion politicians are heretics. He ignores every heresy I bring up. He shows his utter misunderstanding of Catholic teaching on who is a heretic. Everything he says basically is refuted. For example, he says, when I'm pointing out how the anti-popes praise schismatics, he says, well, they don't praise their schismatic ministry. And then I hit him with numerous quotes in which they specifically praise their schismatic ministry. So that's how the debate with him went. But anyway, he writes us too on the same day and says, Mr. John Salza and myself are interested in debating you two in a live, moderated public debate. If you're interested, let us know. Okay, well, this is strange because he's claiming that he's going to debate with Salza. And Salza's sending us an email as if he never got our letter, which we don't believe, and that he wants to engage in a live debate. But he doesn't mention the involvement of this other guy. It's bizarre. So anyway, we're not interested in debating the other guy again. We've already debated him. He's been dealt with. We're interested, and I'm interested in debating Salza in a one-on-one debate. He wrote the article, I wrote the rebuttal. That's what we want to do. And so I wrote back, and the first thing I address is his claim that he didn't receive our letter or didn't know about our letter. And I said, John, there are a few points that need to be made, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can read the full emails. They're very interesting in this file. I'm going to summarize and read some of the highlights. I said on August 23rd, I sent you an email about a debate. The email was sent to your email address. Since you claim that I misrepresented the facts about this matter, and that's another thing, this guy Salza is saying that, he says that it's not true that he had avoided a telephone discussion debate. That's what he's saying. It's not true. So basically, we're misrepresenting him, which is completely untrue. And I said, the email was sent to this email address. Is this your email address? Can you confirm that it was sent to that email address? And then I said, I did send a certified letter that was received and signed for at your address. Oh, that's another point, is that in his initial response, Salza says that, quote, I was disappointed not only that you didn't send your rebuttal to me, but also because you claimed that I signed for a certified letter about a telephone discussion debate that I thereafter avoided. This is not true. But rather than verify your facts, you went on to call me a coward. End quote. Now this is very interesting. He says, you claimed that I signed for a certified letter about a telephone discussion debate. That's not what I said. So he's lying right off the bat, which is quite revealing. What I said in my article is that we sent him an email and that we sent a certified letter to his address. The letter was received and signed for at his address. That's what we said. We didn't say that he personally signed for it. We said that it was sent to his address and signed for by someone at his address. Now he knows the difference between the two statements. And so the fact that he's misrepresenting what I said in my article, he's falsely accusing me of having said that he signed for the letter when he knows I didn't say that, reveals that he's trying to obfuscate the issue. He's trying to make it seem like he didn't get the letter, but he's not really willing to say, I didn't see the letter. He's saying, I didn't sign for the letter. Well, that's not the issue. We never said you signed for it. Did you see it after someone signed for it at your address? That's the point. And as we go on here, we're going to see why he's obfuscating the issue in this way. He wants to make it look like he didn't get the letter, okay, and he dances around the issue. He'll say things like, I have no record of the letter. Well, yeah, if the letter's been discarded, then you don't have a record of it anymore. Anyway, so I go on to say, was this your email address? Was this your address? Did someone receive it at your address? And I say, I find it extremely difficult to believe that you just found out about the article. Perhaps by the word just, you mean a few months ago. Nevertheless, since this is the first I've heard from you since my original email and letter, both of which were sent months ago, please respond to my original debate invitation offer challenge. Would you engage in a recorded telephone debate conversation between the two of us on the topic of sedevacantism? Yes or no? And I go on to explain why those are easy, flexible, and if he's concerned about equal time, we can have a 2-minute back and forth, 3-minute back and forth, guarantee equal time, like I've done with other debates. He can record it, and so that's a very reasonable way of doing it. He responded on December 28th, 2010. He indicates in his response that he will not engage me in a telephone debate, just as we said in the article. So it's interesting that he wants to act as if he's not avoiding us. But what's his conclusion? He won't do the telephone debate. And he proposes a live debate instead. However, here's the catch. The live debate he proposes will not just concern the issue of whether Benedict XVI is the Pope. It will also concern a lawsuit that we are currently engaged in, our monastery, and our opinions about the end times. In his response of December 28th, he also confirms that the email I sent in August was indeed sent to his email address, and that the letter I sent was received at his physical address. Okay? So he's confirming as true exactly what I said in the article. And I want to read some of it. You can read the whole email. It's very interesting. Maybe I should just blow through it really fast. But he says, Peter, he doesn't call me brother. He has no problem with his anti-pope calling the leaders of schismatic sects His Holiness and the members of their schismatic flocks the faithful, etc. Hypocrisy. He says, first, although the email address is correct, because of the volume of emails I receive, I don't open up most of them, which was the case with your email, unless the subject line warrants it. I may even shut down the website email in the future. This is my interjection. He's not clearly saying that he didn't see the email. He's a lawyer, and this could be a way of saying, I don't open up emails unless the subject line warrants it. What does that mean? Anyway, he goes on and says, second, I have no record of receiving your letter. What does that mean? That's not the question if you have a record of it. Did you see it after it was signed for at your address? He's dancing around the issue. He goes on, because it was sent to my business address and was unrelated to my business, it must have been disposed of. Nevertheless, you assumed I received it without verifying the facts, and then you went on to publicly slander my name, because you concluded I was avoiding you. Third, I did not find out about your article until recently, when a patron sent it to me. But the foregoing facts are irrelevant to this correspondence. If we are going to have a debate, then I want it to be a live face-to-face debate in a neutral setting with a moderator. There will be an independent videographer, and the recording of the debate will be unedited. You and I will not have control over the video or audio of the debate. We will have substantial time to present our positions, 25-30 minutes at a time, and the same amount of time for cross-examination sessions. You will also not be able to limit the scope of questions in cross-examination as you do in your telephone debates. Because you have unjustly maligned my character in your public audio and written materials, surely you can understand how I desire to defend my character. By taking the approach you did, you have also made your own credibility an issue. These facts, coupled with the information I have about you and Most Holy Family Monastery, make inquiry into your credibility a relevant area for cross-examination. For example, your claims concerning your religious order, your end times, prophecies, etc. These cross-examination sessions will be similar to what you will experience in the current fraud and racketeering case pending against you in the Western District of New York. Given Judge Curtin's ruling that there is sufficient evidence against you to merit a trial, you ought to be prepared for this kind of scrutiny, although I can understand why you wouldn't want to expose yourself in such a way. The scattergun approach you take in your telephone debates does not allow for a thorough examination of your positions. Moreover, I have investigated the tactics you use in your telephone debates and have documentation that you have edited out content from your opponent's debate material when it hurts your position. As you will soon learn, you will not be able to edit out the federal court's transcripts in your current fraud litigation. So my answer is yes to the face-to-face debate and no to the telephone debate. Let me know if you wish to proceed. If so, I will propose further terms and conditions in my next correspondence. John Salza. And he actually ends his email with a threat that he can sue us for our supposed misrepresentation of him. There are so many things to address in this email, and I'm going to read my response. I responded to Salza on January 6, 2011. Now, before I read my response, I want to point out, notice how I've been quite reasonable. I proposed an equal time telephone debate. He refused. Now, in this response, I expose his dishonest tactics and his false accusations. And keep in mind that he said in this email that he would do a live debate. Okay, so he said no to the telephone debate. He said yes to the live debate, but the live debate is going to include all of this irrelevant nonsense. And so in my response, I say this. This is January 6, 2011. John. If you reread my original communications, you will notice that I tried to approach the debate with you in a cordial way. You ignored my letter for months, and now you have responded with emails that contain numerous false accusations and misrepresentations. For that reason, in this communication I will be blunt. At the end of this communication, I explain how I would be willing to engage in a live debate. As your email confirms, my original letter was sent to your email address. You also confirm that the certified letter was received at your business address. You also confirm that you desire to avoid a recorded telephone debate. Those are the claims I made about you in my article, and they are all proven true by what you have said. I did not misrepresent you. Hence, for you to continue to claim that I did is quite dishonest and strikes at the heart of your credibility. It's similar to the dishonesty entailed in your position that Benedict XVI holds the Catholic faith. You thus slander me, not the other way around. I also contacted your law office in Milwaukee. The person I spoke with confirmed that mail addressed to John Salza is, as one would expect, delivered to you. It is not discarded. Someone else we know called your law office and was told the same thing by Tammy, who said she works for you. She made it clear that mail is given to you whether it's certified mail or not. Moreover, Barb Corveau, the person who signed for the letter at your office, confirmed to Sister Anne, a sister at our convent, that the letter was delivered to you. Your story is not credible, and we have proof that the letter was received at your address and at your email address. You also don't mention exactly or even the month when you first learned about my letter or my email. You speak in deliberately vague terms about the issue. For example, you have, quote, no record of the letter. Obviously because you desire to give the impression that you were unaware of the letter for longer than you were. You dance around the issue because you want to obfuscate the matter. Given the way you handle these small things, I can see why you fail in the big things. Matthew 25:23. For example, you write, quote, I did not find out about your article until recently when a patron sent it to me. Instead of telling us when and how you first learned of my email or letter, or even if you saw the letter after it was signed for, you say that you didn't find out about my, quote, article, something different, until recently. You purposely speak of the article, and you don't even specify what you mean by recently for the reasons described above. If you think you can get away with this activity before the judgment seat of Christ, that is, obfuscating the truth in order to perpetuate the false impression that you were unaware of something you knew, you are deceiving yourself. It's not only the sin of dishonesty, but it's also a sin against your fellow man, because you are falsely accusing me of stating something untrue. Note that we too can take legal remedy for your slander and misrepresentation should you choose to publish it to others. Your legal threat, on the other hand, is empty, and we are not cowed by it, for all of the facts on this point are against you. Moreover, if you did make any claim, we would make our own counterclaim against you. You further misrepresent the truth when you say, quote, I have investigated the tactics you use in your telephone debates, and have documentation that you have edited out content from your opponent's debate material when it hurts your position. This is false. Since you made this false claim, please cite your, quote, documentation. And as an interjection, when he writes back, he doesn't even mention it, and he has no documentation because his claim is a lie. I go on. As an example, I engaged in 2 formal debates with someone I think you know, William Albrecht. Not 1 second of the debate content on either side was removed, as he knows. I would also, of course, guarantee that if we debated, none of the actual content would be removed, excluding dead time for rest breaks. You could record it yourself, and I would encourage you to do so if we engaged in a telephone debate. But you are obviously afraid to have a mature discussion about the issue over the phone. Moreover, don't confuse your false claim about my debates with a proposal I made to William Albrecht concerning a possible 3rd debate with him. To separate facts from your fiction, I engaged in 2 formal debates with Albrecht, and not 1 second of the debate was removed. After the debate, Albrecht wanted a 3rd debate, for the first 2 did not go well for him. He also angrily threatened to use that debate as a means to engage in a slander fest against us. He uttered many outrageous lies about us, and he said that he would use the debate format to declare them. In light of that, I proposed that if I were to debate him again, I would have the right to remove such irrelevant lies. It was a proposal in the unique case of a 3rd debate with Albrecht, not what I have done in my previous debates. I actually relented on that proposal and never followed up on it. And if I debated him again, it would be agreed on both sides that no one would remove any of the content, as was the case with our previous debates. So if that's what you are relying on for your false statement about my debates, it shows how seriously you distort facts. It's also inconsistent that you claim on the one hand to be so unfamiliar with our website that you had no idea we posted an article or audios about you, but on the other hand, you claim to be so familiar with our website that you have already listened to our debates and investigated our, quote, debate tactics. Furthermore, you should not rely on the words of William Albrecht. It could get you into trouble. He consistently lies and distorts the truth. There's no other way to put it. Many of the things he says about us and other matters are false. He's the same person who claimed that he had a quote in which St. Jerome approved as valid a form of consecration containing the word all. As expected, it was a total fabrication. Like many other things he says, for example, his statement that many Lutherans accept the Council of Trent, his statement that many of the Fathers taught sola fide, his statement that the Council of Trent declared, "This is my body, this is my blood," is all that's necessary for a consecration, etc. It's also clear that you are unwilling to debate me on the topic of whether Benedict XVI is the Pope. You say that you will only engage in a live debate in which you will ask us all kinds of irrelevant questions about our current litigation and our monastery. By the way, as an interjection, you can read on our website about this lawsuit we're in. There's a file called Our Lawsuit, and it's a completely baseless claim that a guy made against us, and it's still ongoing, but he's suing us for fraud because we claim to be Benedictine but are not with the Vatican II apostate Benedictines. According to this ridiculous lawsuit, any independent group that claims to be Benedictine is committing fraud. So the, quote, Benedictine monastery in New Mexico that is sympathetic with the Society of St. Pius X, Our Lady of Guadalupe, they are fraudulent according to this reasoning. It's ridiculous, and the guy claims that he was deceived about what he was joining, when anyone who follows our material or knows the guy at all knows that's utterly untrue. He was extremely familiar with our material prior to entering. We would never let anyone enter our community who was not in full agreement. He was in full agreement for over 2 years when he was here and even made vows. When he left our community, it was not to join the Vatican II Church. It was because he became a radical schismatic, and so it's a ridiculous lawsuit. Also, when this individual entered our monastery, the money he gave to us, he donated. He was not forced to do so. And an outrageous lie has been circulated that there was some written agreement that we were supposed to give him a certain amount of money back, and that we did not do so. That is utterly untrue. It has been and will be exploded in court. No such written agreement exists. There was no written agreement that guarantees him any money back. He donated the money, and yet Salza and all these other mortally sinful liars repeat that falsehood. It's an outrage. And he repeats it even though he has no proof for it, because his arguments were demolished and his article was exposed. And so he has nothing else to say about us but to lie and try to attack us personally with baseless claims. Moreover, back to this fraud claim that this individual's making, his lawsuit is that we supposedly represented ourselves as being part of what he calls the, quote, publicly recognized Order of St. Benedict. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that we're quite clear that we're not with the Vatican II Benedictines, those he calls the, quote, publicly recognized Order of St. Benedict. And since the court cannot rule on who is a true Benedictine, what he has been left with is making an argument that he thought he was joining the Vatican II Benedictines, when that is a joke. In fact, in his filed responses, he has contradicted himself so many times on the Benedictine issue. In his reply to our counterclaims, he admitted that he cannot identify one person he believes to be a true member of the Order of St. Benedict. Yet he's suing us for not being with the, quote, publicly recognized order, or for supposedly having claimed to be part of the publicly recognized order. He also admitted in his affidavit that he filed that he does not believe the publicly recognized order is truly legitimate. He says, quote, "My own belief is that the publicly recognized Order of St. Benedict organization has in recent decades departed from authentic Catholic religious doctrine on certain matters, and that this undermines its Benedictine legitimacy. I understand that the defendants share this belief, which they have stated publicly since before my entrance into Most Holy Family Monastery, end quote. So he's admitting here that he believes the, quote, publicly recognized order has departed from legitimacy, and that he shared our belief, which we were public about. So there's no fraud there. Now, he contradicted this in other filings. He went on to say in one of his replies to a question we asked him that he believes that, quote, the persons and monasteries that are now publicly recognized as the OSB are legitimate members of the OSB. And he even says that this is after, quote, further consideration, and that he was in a state of puzzlement. So that means that he has changed his position on who is, quote, Benedictine within the course of this case. And this is also stunning apostasy, because this individual, his name is Eric, he claims to be a sedevacantist. And yet, in this case, he has professed that the, quote, persons and monasteries of what he calls the publicly recognized Order of St. Benedict are the legitimate members of the OSB. It's a sin so great, it's almost immeasurable. But the point is here, the guy has no credibility. He's all over the map on who is a Benedictine because his claim is frivolous, it's false. And he's made other statements that prove that we didn't deceive him at all. In fact, in a telephone conversation that he had on August 4th, 2008, during the course of this case, he was required to turn over this recording to us. And in this conversation with a woman who is a sedevacantist, he's complaining that he doesn't even believe in something his lawyer filed on his behalf. And I want to quote exactly from the transcript. This is from the official transcript. And I'm sure that he never imagined he would have to turn over all of this information to us. And so that's why he's making these kinds of admissions. He's talking about, quote, I just found this out today. Last week, this guy, referring to his lawyer, put in a brief with the court, you know, in regard to one matter that's coming up here, where he just flat out argues for a good page, page and a half or so, however much it is, 1 page or something, about how the Vatican II Benedictines are the Order of St. Benedict. And the person he's talking to responds, well, they're not. And this individual we're in the lawsuit with responds, yeah, end quote. And so he admits that he doesn't even believe, in this case, in what his lawyer filed with the court. That's how ridiculous this case is. And all these facts have come out, and they will further come out. And so they're thoroughly on our side. But this is the, quote, fraud claim. And there's something else that needs to be mentioned in this regard. He sent an email to this same woman, and in the email there was an attached file called Thoughts on OSB. In other words, Thoughts on the Order of St. Benedict. He was required to turn this over to us. And I'm going to quote exactly from what the document says. He says within the document, quote, I understood that MHFM claimed to be a faithful remnant of the OSB, and that MHFM was not presently affiliated with those commonly considered as OSB, end quote. That's his whole case. With that statement, not to mention many others, he destroys his entire claim. His whole case is that we supposedly claimed fraudulently to be part of what he calls the publicly recognized Order of St. Benedict. In other words, the Vatican II Church, and their, quote, Benedictines. He's admitting here that he understood that MHFM was not presently affiliated with those commonly considered as OSB, which anyone who follows our stuff knows that we're not in union with the Vatican II false, quote, Benedictines. We don't believe they're true Benedictines. So that's how ridiculous this lawsuit is. But our enemies, they have nothing else to say, so they just repeat this thing over and over again. By the way, something else that's extremely interesting is that in the aforementioned document, Thoughts on OSB, which this individual, Eric, probably never imagined he would have to turn over to us, he attempts to, in his darkened mind, explain away all of his contradictions on these issues. Remember, he said earlier in the case that he can't identify one member of the Order of St. Benedict, and that the, quote, publicly recognized order has departed from Benedictine legitimacy, and that we shared that position and were public about it. But then he said, after further consideration, he regards as legitimate those persons and monasteries commonly regarded as OSB. That would mean that someone like Sister Joan Chittister, the apostate nun in the Vatican II Church who's so notoriously heretical that even Novus Ordo groups denounce her. She would be legitimately OSB according to this individual Eric, who claims to be a sedevacantist. But anyway, in the midst of all these contradictions, he's trying to explain this away in his dishonest mind. He says in this document, Thoughts on OSB, quote, "So I do not encourage or agree with the idea that the persons commonly acknowledged as the OSB are legitimately such in the sight of God. I accept the presumption that they are such in the eyes of the U.S. law." End quote. So this is how he's now trying to justify his apostasy. He doesn't believe they're legitimately OSB, as he's saying here, and as he indicated in other statements, in the eyes of God. But for the purpose of this lawsuit, he's going to say they are in the eyes of the U.S. law. That is so theologically ridiculous. That's the equivalent of saying that during the 16th century, the Catholics could have acknowledged Henry VIII as the supreme head of the Church of England, because that was true in the eyes of the law at that time, even though it was not true in the sight of God. Or that in the ancient church, the Christians could have acknowledged the false gods of the Romans, because in the eyes of the Roman law, they were considered to be the legitimate gods, even though they were not truly divine in the eyes of God. It's illogical and, in fact, unspeakably demonic apostasy, especially when we consider it's coming from a guy who claims to hold the sedevacantist position and claimed not to want to compromise with the Vatican II Church in any way. And so he admits that what he is filing, he doesn't even believe to be true in the sight of God. And in the same document, he admits that he knew we were not presently affiliated with those commonly considered as OSB. That's how absurd this whole affair is. And anyone who can think knows that we're quite clear about where we stand on these issues. In fact, we are suing this individual who sued us for numerous things, and all of the facts are on our side. Indeed, after he left our monastery, he sent out emails from our email address, which is a violation of law. In addition, after he had concluded that he did not want to be part of the monastery anymore because he changed his religious views, he tried to take the monastery's money. He tried to transfer those monies to himself. He also admitted that he departed with the monastery's financial records. And so these are all crucial admissions which support our counterclaims. Since all of the facts are in our favor, we would expect that his case will be dismissed and that we will be able to proceed with our counterclaims. Anyway, I must now get back to my email response to John Salza. If you will recall, before I took some time to discuss the facts of this lawsuit, I was reading my response to Salza. He brought up the lawsuit, so it was necessary to give some more background on that issue. Now I will go back to reading my response to him. Quote, "According to you, the debate will be about our monastery, our lawsuit, and our opinions about the end times, rather than the subject matter of your article and my rebuttal, namely the validity of Benedict XVI. It serves to demonstrate that you cannot engage me in a telephone debate on that issue, for your position would be soundly refuted, but rather you must attempt to distract people from the facts with distortions, gossip, and unjustified personal attacks. You've probably been pumped with quite a bit of misinformation and distortion about our monastery. In line with your consistent misrepresentation of the facts, you state, quote, given Judge Curtin's ruling that there is sufficient evidence against you to merit a trial, you ought to be prepared for this kind of scrutiny, although I can understand why you wouldn't want to expose yourself in such a way. End quote. Once again, you are wrong. The judge has not ruled that there is sufficient evidence to merit a trial. We haven't even reached the end of discovery or made a summary judgment motion yet. You do not know what you are talking about, and you have misrepresented us as a result. How many times have you misrepresented the facts in these few emails? That's all you have, distortions, misrepresentations, and unjustified argumenta ad hominem. I can see why you lack the grace to identify your doctrinal errors. You are a dishonest person in the smallest dealings. You first lied and said that I wrote that you signed for the letter, when you knew that I did not. As you will soon realize, you will not be able to avoid your lies, your distortions of the truth, your denials of Catholic teaching, and your defenses of some of the worst apostates of all time, for example, John Paul II and Benedict XVI, before the judgment seat of Christ. Any debate encounter we would have would amount to your position being theologically exposed, not the other way around. That would include one in which you would try to muddy the waters by irrelevant and unjustified personal attacks. I would refute your misconceptions, turn away your false claims, and in the process demonstrate that your tactic only reveals the bankruptcy of your position. Perhaps in such an encounter, your apostasy from the Catholic faith and self-admitted decision to make an oath to the devil in the higher echelons of Freemasonry, and how you reconcile that with your, quote, Catholic conscience, might be a relevant area for cross-examination. We could explore why we should have any confidence in the, quote, integrity of a supposed cradle Catholic like you, who, as a Freemason, chose to completely give up Jesus Christ and ally himself with Lucifer for social and worldly gain, and how your integrity compares to mine. Someone who was raised without a religion, chose to enter the traditional Catholic faith and religious life, and alienated a wealthy father in the process. All of this being said, since you refuse to do a telephone debate, I will debate you in a one-on-one live debate on the specific topic of whether Benedict XVI is the Pope. I will do a live debate with you, provided we can agree on the precise terms and format, as long as the debate takes place in Buffalo, New York, or Rochester, New York. Whether you believe it or not, we do live in a religious community and rarely leave the monastery. Since you refuse to do over the phone, you should be willing to come to New York. There are many neutral locations in those two cities. In the debate, I of course can't stop you from saying what you will or asking what you will, no matter how irrelevant or inappropriate it might be. I will respond in an appropriate manner to any irrelevant questions or false accusations you might bring forward. I will demonstrate that your need to venture into unrelated areas speaks to the falsity of your position and your desire to distract from the issue. You can, in turn, attempt to demonstrate why you think my answers, or lack thereof, bolster your position. I go on to talk about how the format should be interactive, and then I close by saying, finally, I must add that if your goal with these communications is simply to accomplish some sort of face-saving measure, we will not let that go unexposed. That is to say, if your intention is to propose something with terms you think will be so unreasonable to me that I can't possibly accept, so that you can receive a no and then attempt to explain away your refusal to engage me in a debate, we can and perhaps will expose that tactic, as well as what you have falsely asserted about my article and audio presentation. Brother Peter Diamond. So that was a long email, but I wanted to read it. After accepting his proposal in this email for a live debate, including one in which he can ask me all kinds of off-topic questions, and those which concern this baseless lawsuit we're involved with, baseless from the standpoint of the person making accusations against us, one would of course expect that Salza would work with me to arrange the live debate, right? He said no to the telephone debate, yes to the live debate, and he wanted to act as if he wasn't avoiding me. So, all right, let's arrange the live debate. But no, as you will see, in his response, he puts up another roadblock, because he had no intention to debate me at all, just as I said in my original article. His goal was simply an attempt to save face. He wanted to propose something that he thought would be so unreasonable to me that I would have to reject it because it would be about this lawsuit. And you don't generally discuss litigation you're involved with, and about, our monastery and other opinions about the end times that are not central to this issue. In fact, I had indicated in email correspondence with another individual he knows that I didn't necessarily want to focus on those other issues. He knew that, and so what he did was he proposed a debate in which all these other things would be mentioned, and he said he'll never accept that, and he expected to get a no. But our position is, let's get it on. We can have a debate, and you can attempt, since you have no argument for your position, to bring up all of these irrelevant side issues, and I will refute you on all of those points as well, and show how it only reveals the bankruptcy of your position. And so I said yes, but in his response, he backs out, and he puts up another roadblock to the live debate. He demands, quote, proof that I am a Benedictine monk before he will engage me in a live debate. But anything I would send him or give him or tell him, he can reject, and thereby avoid a debate. It's truly pathetic, despicable, and cowardly. Here's his response, January 14th, 2011, and I'm going to summarize it. Peter, why are you wasting so much time on the August letter? My administrative staff, whom you harassed with repeated phone calls on January 5 to 6, 2011, told you that as an international firm, sometimes our mail gets lost or is inadvertently discarded. My interjection, it's not a credible story. Mail gets lost, certified mail, and the email. And it would have maybe a tiny bit of credibility if he were willing to engage me in a telephone debate. He's not. Just as I said in the article, that's why he avoided me from the start, because he was not interested. Because 5 minutes into the debate, as soon as I get to ask him questions, his whole position is going to be exposed. I'm going to prove that Benedict XVI and Vatican II officially teach that the schismatic Orthodox are part of the Church of Christ. That constitutes an overthrow of Catholic dogma on the papacy. It absolutely proves that their position is false and that Benedict XVI cannot be the Pope. And they can't handle any of those issues. All they can do is, people can see from our previous debates, is ignore them. That's all they can do. And so these guys, especially the more prominent ones, they will not allow themselves to be in a situation where we could expose their position. He goes on to say, your only possible motivation in focusing on the letter is to malign my character by wanting to claim that I am avoiding you. That is not true. But since you have called me dishonest and publicly defamed my character and good name, your credibility is now at issue. Further, since you have accused me of fraudulently misrepresenting canon law in your response to my article in The Remnant, your standing to interpret canon law is also at issue. Therefore, as a condition to moving forward, please provide me proof that you are a recognized Benedictine monk under the laws of the Catholic Church. Clearly, your alleged status under canon law is relevant to your standing to interpret canon law and declare the Pope a heretic. And he goes on with more of the same, and even says that if he encountered an opposing lawyer who was not a licensed attorney, that he would demand proof that he was, and all of this nonsense. And he goes on, this is not a tactic to avoid a debate. It is a condition to having the debate. In fact, it is the simplest question I could possibly ask you. Prove who you claim to be. And more about the same he goes on to say. Does anyone need to say more about this guy? He proves himself to be a spiritual fraud. He demonstrates the dishonesty of his tactics, the unreliability of his words, by this exchange. He acts as if he didn't know about it, but yet he's not willing to do it, and we have all the evidence that he received the email and the letter. He says no to the telephone debate, but yes to the live debate. Let's do the live debate. Let's settle our differences in a face-to-face live debate. Okay, let's work for it. No, now he's backing out because he never wanted to do it in the beginning. This is outrageous. Outrageous activity. These are the so-called defenders of the anti-pope. This is why they're blind to the truth, because of this kind of activity. They're not honest people. They're disgraceful. I responded to him on January 21st, 2011. Another thing I want to say is that these lawyers, like Salza, he threatens you. If you try to criticize him, he wants to be a public figure. He wants to put himself out there on, quote, Catholic radio and Catholic TV and publish books. Okay? And yet, anyone who critiques and refutes him, for example, in my case, he's threatening me for criticizing him. He's threatening me and claiming that I falsely accuse him. It is pure nonsense. And so that's how they try to bully people. But we're not going to be bullied by these heretics. We're not backing down to these heretics. And we'll sue them right back. On January 21st, 2011, I wrote back to this heretic. I said, the people at your law office confirmed that your mail is delivered to you. They did not, as you falsely claim, tell us that it is discarded. They contradicted your story and what you have said in your latest email. We did not harass people at your law office, but simply posed questions and received answers, which further confirmed that your story is untrue. You are the one who made false accusations concerning the August letter, so it was necessary to refute them in full. If we deem it necessary to respond publicly, your latest false claims will be publicly exposed. I say it's interesting that you ignored my refutation of the numerous false accusations you made in your email. For example, you ignored and did not apologize for your false statement that I edit out content from my opponent's debate material in my formal debates. You made that charge. You even claimed that you had proof for it, and it was false. You also ignored my refutation of your false statement that Judge Curtin has ruled that there is sufficient evidence against us to merit a trial. You made that charge, and it was false. As I said in my last email, I am willing to engage you in a live debate. Either you are willing to debate me, or you are not. Based on your last email, it's obvious that you are not. For after I agreed to a live debate, you are putting up another roadblock. You now say that I must prove to your satisfaction that I am a Benedictine monk. And of course, you will be the arbiter of whether the proof is sufficient. Whatever facts or arguments I provide, you can reject. That is an obvious attempt to avoid a debate. In fact, it's interesting to consider that you didn't demand any, quote, proof from me in your initial email, but only after I agreed to a live debate. In response, I say that I don't need to prove anything to you. In the debate itself, you can attempt to disprove my position and attack my person and status, since that seems to be your main tactic. We can see how well that will work for you. Moreover, whether you think I'm a Benedictine monk has no relevance to whether Benedict XVI is the Pope. Indeed, you don't even call me brother anyway, unless you already act as if I'm not a religious. You further err when you write that the entire issue concerns canon law. Canon law is one aspect involved, but a proper understanding of the issue also involves Catholic dogma, the divine law, papal infallibility, the limits of canon law, etc. Further, one doesn't have to be a Benedictine monk, a religious, or a priest to prove that Benedict XVI is not the Pope. You wrote, I told you I am willing to debate you. Why would I want to debate you now, but not a few months ago? You are not willing. You rejected the telephone debate, just as I said months ago, and now you are finding a way out of the live debate. If you refuse to debate me until I provide you with some kind of proof concerning which you will be the judge if it's sufficient, then that is of course equivalent to backing out of a debate. Unless you indicate otherwise, one can only take your latest email as a confirmation that 1. You not only have refused the offer to do a telephone debate, but also 2. You have backed out of a live debate. If we deem it necessary to address this matter further, we will expose this publicly. Brother Peter Diamond. Salza wrote back on January 27, 2011, with more of the same. He does not accept the proposal for a live debate, but instead demands proof that we are Benedictine monks. In fact, he even says that the Vatican II, quote, Order of St. Benedict, will be the judge of whether that proof is sufficient. So we felt it was necessary to expose what occurred here, because he shouldn't be able to get away with this. He writes to us and then acts as if he didn't know about this prominent article we had refuting him, acts as if he didn't get the email addressed to his email address, acts as if he didn't get the mail that was received at his business address. It's not credible. And he doesn't directly say that he never saw the letter after it was received. He says he has no record of the letter and other things like that. Then he proposes a live debate, and it's all calculated, we believe. He wants to try to save face because, frankly, the article devastated his position. It completely destroyed his position. And he's also not willing to accept the debate offer. And so we believe he concocted this elaborate plan to save face, essentially, that he would propose a live debate, and a live debate that would include all of this other nonsense. And he would almost certainly, he thought, get a no, and then he could post some article or publish some article in which he says, no, I didn't avoid them. I simply proposed a more professional live debate, and they weren't willing to do it. And his plan backfired. It didn't work because I was willing to do a live debate. Let's do it. Let's see what you can come up with. And all of your tactics will be exposed in the live debate. They won't get you anywhere. For example, one of the side issues that John Salza would try to bring up in a debate, if he were willing to debate us, which he's obviously not, is that we called John Paul II the Antichrist. And this guy Salza is such a liar. He is just a total liar. He says that we, quote, publicly declared that Pope John Paul II was the Antichrist and the world was going to end during his reign, end quote. That is a lie. We definitely declared that he was the Antichrist. In other words, we said it was our opinion that he was the Antichrist. No one else has to agree with that. But we did not say that the world was going to end during his reign. We never said that. It's just a lie. We still believe that John Paul II is the final Antichrist. And with the, quote, election of Benedict XVI and how he's moving toward causing people to worship this guy, and how that fits with what's prophesied in Apocalypse 13, it's looking very much like we were correct, and that what we said before Benedict XVI was even, quote, elected is correct. But no one has to agree with that. That's our opinion. People can disagree. We didn't say it was infallible, and it's not central to the issue of whether Benedict XVI is the Pope. So Salza is just wrong. He misrepresents what we said and lies about us. He distorts the facts, and furthermore, it's not disproven what we said about John Paul II. The guy claimed to be Jesus Christ. He claimed that every man is Jesus Christ right in the Vatican, and now they're moving toward having people worship him. And the one who is causing people to worship him is a man whose name equals 666 in Greek, and all the other things we pointed out in our series on the Apocalypse. But you can disagree with that. But he goes on to say, since he thinks this is proven to be false, that John Paul II is the Antichrist, he goes, quote, "This means the Diamond Brothers are also false prophets," end quote. And this is an example of one of those side issues he would want to get into. If I debated him, not only would he be destroyed on the issue of sedevacantism, but even on all these side issues we'd get into, he'd be demolished. For example, this one. He is saying that we are false prophets because he thinks we were wrong in saying that John Paul II was the Antichrist. Well, first of all, it's not even proven we were wrong about that. But secondly, that wouldn't show that we are false prophets, even if we were wrong about that. Let me cite a few facts to educate Salza on this issue. For example, St. Athanasius declared that the Emperor Constantius was the abomination of desolation. Okay? That's quoted in Leo Donald Davis's book, The First Seven Ecumenical Councils, page 94. Here's what St. Athanasius said: "Who would not justly exclaim that this was the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel?" He said that back in the early church. Well, obviously that doesn't seem to be true, because the abomination of desolation is on earth shortly before the end. And so obviously he was wrong. Would Salza say that St. Athanasius was a false prophet? According to his argument, he would have to. It shows just how thoroughly he'd be refuted on all these side issues if we debated, but he's not willing to do that for obvious reasons. Another example is St. Bernard. He proclaimed that anti-Pope Anacletus II was the beast of the apocalypse. So according to the heretic Salza, St. Bernard was a false prophet because, I think everyone would agree, Anacletus was not the Antichrist, not the, quote, beast of prophecy. So Salza is wrong and refuted again, just like he is on all of these points. And that's what would have been pointed out if he had possessed the courage to engage in a debate. And when he brought that up, that's how I would refute him. But, what do you know? He's not interested. He now demands more proof that I'm a Benedictine monk. And, again, there are a lot of things I could say about that issue. But it's irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant to the point. And anything I would say, he would just say, no, it's not proof. And so what it does prove is what I said about him in the article. And these are the guys who keep people in the Vatican II sect. Another thing is that this guy is a former high-ranking Freemason. He was a 32nd degree Freemason, and he left the lodge in the late 1990s. It was 1998 or 1999, somewhere around there. In his rise through the higher ranks of Freemasonry, this guy actually swore an oath to Allah on the Koran. And this is while he claimed to be a Catholic. Now, he would admit that he apostatized from the faith and became a non-Catholic. And that's interesting to consider in itself, because By taking that position, he's actually refuting the position he advances in his article, because the position he advances in his article, which I refute in many ways, is that you cannot determine that someone is a heretic until the church tells us. Then by what authority does he consider Freemasons who claim to be Catholic as non-Catholic? He considers that he ceased to be a member of the church and that other Catholics should hold that position. And he would have to apply that reasoning to other Freemasons who claim to be Catholic. So you are therefore admitting that without a declaration, people who engage in activity that is directly incompatible with the possession of Catholic faith must be considered non-Catholics. He is torpedoing his position by that little admission. But anyway, it shows you the level of darkness this guy was involved with. And again, he's condemned Freemasonry, but when you see the same kind of slimy tactics and acting like you're going to do a debate, but then refusing to do one solely to save face and assist your public credibility, that's not the activity of a Catholic. That's the activity of someone who is still bound by dark forces. And in fact, he admits that when he was involved with Freemasonry, he was part of the Synagogue of Satan. He was actually a member of 2 different Masonic lodges. He was almost elected worshipful master in one Masonic lodge. He admits that the oaths he swore were hypocritical, and I could give an example of that. He also says that, quote, "I felt a very evil presence when I was conferring those oaths," end quote. He says this in his talk, "Why Can't Catholics Be Masons?" at St. Catherine of Siena, October 3rd, 2010. So he's admitting essentially that an evil spirit overtook him when he joined the Masonic Lodge, and he rose to a very high level. And he was deeply involved in this Masonic darkness. When he goes through everything they do, and Brother Michael has a very interesting video on this, Abortion, Rock Music, Freemasonry Exposed, which goes through the diabolical rituals that they are part of and engage in. And so this is what he was involved with. And he's talking about credibility. Not only was he involved with it, but he instructed others on the path of Freemasonry. That is to say, he not only took the diabolical oaths himself, he conferred them upon others. He even says that this is so evil that he would sometimes see the facial appearance of people who were doing this change. So he was not an unwilling or reluctant participant in the demonic art of Freemasonry. No, he was aggressive about it. And since Satan cannot cast out Satan, Matthew 12:26, only those who completely embrace Christ and his honest ways and undergo a sincere and thorough conversion can be freed from this kind of evil. And we know from Matthew 7:13 that such a conversion is rare. Therefore, it's not a surprise that we see that Salza is still so dishonest in his argumentation, in his articles, in his emails. And while he no longer instructs others how to lie and blaspheme God in the Masonic Lodge, he now teaches people how to lie and deny the truth in other ways. That is, by defending as Catholic people who completely deny the papacy and the Catholic faith, by defending as Christian people who deny Jesus Christ and promote false religions like Judaism and Islam, by distorting canon law and telling us, on the one hand, that heretics lose their offices without any declaration, but, on the other hand, you must regard a heretic as the Pope until there is a declaration, and by misrepresenting Catholic teaching in sundry ways. And again, people can convert, but when they demonstrate this kind of activity, dishonest activity, as I exposed in these emails, then their past activity becomes relevant. So we felt it was necessary to expose what he did because we believe he wanted to spin this whole thing, and we had to tell the people the truth about what happened. The fact is, we're willing to debate him. He won't debate us, even when he's allowed to ask us all of these personal questions. And why does he have to do that? The reason he has to do that is because if we stuck to the issues, his position would be destroyed. And he won't even do a debate, even when he can do that. But the only way he would even consider a debate is if he could bring in all kinds of irrelevant issues and argumenta ad hominem. One final thing to mention is that as I was composing these emails to send back to him, I was thinking about a debate with him, and I looked on his website, and I noticed that he has a section on Eastern, quote, Orthodoxy, and he hosts an article written by another guy named Dave Armstrong. But Salza posts this and endorses it because it's on his website. And here's what it says about Eastern Orthodoxy, quote, Catholics must believe that Orthodoxy is a part of the universal church, commensurate with the Second Vatican Council and many recent papal encyclicals on ecumenism in general, or orthodoxy in particular. End quote. So this guy Salza, who sometimes purports to be a traditionalist Catholic, he will hang out and speak at conferences with individuals who criticize the Second Vatican Council and its false ecclesiology. He is promoting this totally heretical, revolutionary teaching on the church that the Eastern, quote, Orthodox are part of the church. It says it right here. Catholics must believe that Orthodoxy is part of the universal church. That overthrows all of Catholic dogma on the papacy, but it is consistent with what Benedict XVI teaches and what the Vatican II sect teaches and what Vatican II itself teaches. So those are two different religions. There's the Catholic religion, which teaches that the Pope and the successors of Peter represent the principle of unity in the church, and that people who reject the papal office are outside the church. The Eastern Orthodox body that rejects the papal office, they're outside the church. That's basic Catholic teaching on the papacy. He teaches the opposite, and he alleges or purports to be an apologist for the Catholic faith. This is the evil hidden, and this would be exposed in a debate. And what would he say? Nothing. And that's why you can't debate these guys, because their positions would be annihilated. This is only part one of my discussion of this issue. In part two, I will get into some of the recent errors that he has made on this issue, and specifically with reference to canon law. It will refute more of his theological errors, etc. But for the full expose of his false position, just read the article I wrote. It's called John Salza's Arguments Against Sedevacantism Crushed. It absolutely proves that he contradicted himself numerous times and advanced things that are directly contrary to the teaching of the magisterium.